Hi, I'm Mary of owlhaven.net, and I am here today to show you a quick and easy way to can tomatoes. A lot of people, when they go to can tomatoes, will go through the whole effort of scalding the tomatoes and then peeling the skin off and quartering them and putting them in jars in chunks. And that's fine and dandy if that's what you want to do, but I deal with a lot of tomatoes every year, and I've kind of streamlined my method so that I can get it done quicker, and actually it makes the tomato sauce easier to make when it comes to using the tomatoes this winter. So what I do is I simply cut out the tops and any bad parts that might be on the tomato and cut them in quarters, and then puree the tomato skin and all in the blender. If you happen to have a tomato with a split in it, you just cut the split right out. If you happen to have a tomato with a little bit of green on it, you're going to want to get that off. But other than that, and sometimes the black bit on the bottom of the tomatoes is a little bit big, and you can cut that off too. But other than that, you just leave the skin on, quarter the tomatoes, and put them on into the blender. The blender will have a little bit of trouble processing, or at least my blender has a little bit of trouble pureeing just tomato chunks, and so for the first batch I usually add about a cup of water to the blender, and then that helps the blender puree all the tomato up really easily. And so it just is very quick, maybe 10 or 15 seconds. Get it pureed just enough. And once you've got the puree, then put it in a pot on the stove, and at that point I just go ahead and start heating it. And I try to leave about this much in the blender and go to chop more tomatoes. The pot on the stove will cook while I am chopping up the rest of my tomatoes. Usually I have kids to help me out, which is really a great thing for making the job go quickly. And then once you've got your pot of tomatoes on the stove all the way full, you can, if you want, just bring it to boiling and put the puree into jars right at that point. But that makes kind of a little bit of a watery puree, and so what I prefer to do is cook it on the stove for an hour or two to take the liquid down. I've been cooking this pot for probably 2 hours, and it was filled almost to the top when I started, and it has decreased by a good 2 inches, and the sauce is much thicker now because it's been cooking for a while. It's very important to hot pack the tomatoes. Before you hot pack them though, it's a good idea to add a little bit of vinegar just to make sure that the tomatoes are acidic enough as far as safety goes. I would probably do about 1/4 of a cup of vinegar in a pot of water a pot of tomatoes this size, and then that will acidify the tomatoes so that they're safe for canning. Get out of the way here. So you always want to put hot puree into your jars, and you want to put it into already hot water in the canner. I have found that it works really well to use a 4-cup measuring cup to fill up quart jars. These quart jars have already been dipped in boiling water so that they are already sterilized. Same thing with the lids and rings that I have. But it works really well to just scoop out your tomato sauce and pour it straight into the jars. It gets a little messy, but you can also use a canning funnel if you want to. Either way is fine. Once you've got the jars filled up, you're going to want to get a clean washcloth. You're going to want to wipe off any tomato that's adhered to the edge. You can see that I've got some there, and just make sure that it's nice and clean in the threads of the jar. You should have filled the jar within 1/4 of an inch of the top. Put on your lid and put on your ring, and then this jar is ready to go into the canner. Once my canning pot will hold 7 jars, so once I've got 7 jars, I'm going to put that in the canner, and process for half an hour. The half an hour starts when the water returns to a boil, which happens pretty quickly because these are already just about boiling hot. This is literally boiling in this pot. So you can lift it straight into the canner with all the other jars, process for 30 minutes. Once it returns to boil, remove it from the pot at that point and let it cool down. You will know that the jar sealed properly when the lid, same things with the grape jelly, when the lid sucks down and there's no bounce in the lid of the tomato jar. And literally that is all that you have to do to can tomatoes. Wasn't that easy?